Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to have you all here. Very excited, to see you in New York. We got a ton of content for you during this couple of days. I'm very glad that to see you all. Nope. So first of all, again, welcome to New York. This is where our headquarters are. This is where the company kind of like got started, started in Spain and then moved here to New York. And and most of the team that of the CARTO of the company, it's here in New York during these 2 days. So for us, it is like a great opportunity to meet with you and and to ensure that you get to know about our product and understand about our partners, etc. So again, welcome to New York. Also, I want to thank not only all of the sponsors, but all the data partners and integrators that are coming for these 2 days. We got a ton of you here. There's more than 30 organizations, 30 partners attending, in these CARTO locations, and there is more than 80 different organizations, from attendees. Total, I believe, is more than 350 attendees that we got finally. So it's very excited to have you all here. You came from many different places around the world. I think in here we got more than 15 different countries. So you've traveled from all around. Thank you very much for doing that. I hope you really get a lot out of it. And before that, I thought it would be good now that we are in New York to talk a little bit about first of all this venue. Isn't it amazing? It's probably one of the most curious places to have an event like this. This is, it used to be the Williamsburg Savings Bank. So this was a bank when banks made buildings like this, I guess. So it was very important at the end of the 19th century and then, towards, mid of the first 20th century. It is actually, a very kind of symbol of the change that the neighborhood is happening. So we are in Williamsburg, one of the fastest changing neighborhoods in New York. Actually, I wanted to tell you also a little bit about that. So Williamsburg, where we are really in Brooklyn, it's really in the center of a lot of the economic change that is happening in this area. And I wanted to tell you a story that I think just to showcase how fast things change in New York, about an area called the Newton Creek. Newton Creek is the creek that separates Brooklyn from Queens. So it's at the border, the northern part of Brooklyn. And there's been some incredible changes going on in this area of New York. So there's one particular story that I like a lot, I want to share with you. In the 19th century, Newton Creek started a huge industrialization process. So we got a lot of industries and went from more of an urban and rural area to a full industrial area. In fact, actually, the thing that changed the most is that in Newton Creek is where the distillation of kerosene was invented. So the creation of kerosene, what happened in Newton Creek was the invention of an inventor called Graham, and he actually managed to distill kerosene directly from coal. And that happened in Newton Creek, and those the first factories started there. So because of that, there was a huge boom on the industrialization in this area. There were more than 30 companies, distilleries, kind of transforming, oil products in that area of New York. Later on, actually, that's where the Standard Oil industry and Rockefeller kind of started his empire. But it all started here in Newton Creek. At that point, in the 19th century, Newton Creek and New York was the center of the oil industry. This, I think, pretty remarkable. One of the things that they were doing, most there, it was using kerosene for lining. Up till the third part of the 19th century, most of the lining was done using whale oil, and that happened. It was so much that the amount of the catching of whales just for producing whale oil for lighting was almost at the edge of collapsing the species. And it was only because in part because kerosene was invented in Newton Creek, and it became cheaper and more convenient than the whale oil, that it's actually considered that we still have the sperm whales, which was the most popular whale for getting the oil. So we're talking about like an area that like where like a rapid invention had this massive impact. Think about like the oil industry, like whales. I find it amazing, right? I find like in like New York full of inspiring of this type of stories. So check it out. Like if you haven't been in Williamsburg or in this area in New York before, I highly recommend you to have a walk. It's full of history of where we stand in. Great. But we came to talk about location, so I'm going to get in started by, first of all, again, remarking what we are looking for in these 2 days. So the first thing is that we would like you to connect with between you, but also with our company. So the majority of CARTO is here, from product to design to the marketing to sales. There's a lot of meetings set up, for these 2 days. But please, like just engage, connect with us, and get us any feedback around our product, what should we be doing, what should we been doing, and new ideas. We're really here, looking forward to connect with you on that. Also around Learn, there is a lot of sessions where we're going to be introducing the new products and new changes on our platform. We actually looking for you to learn about the latest, and also we want to learn from you about what you think is most important. And finally, engage. Like I said, like we have meetings for sales, we got meetings for products. We're going to have a number of sessions for networking. Please use that. There is, there is CARTO, there is data partners, there is CARTO integrators, there's customers, there's a whole kind of like ecosystem of CARTO here at locations. So use that. All right. So with that, kind of like, like the theme, start by the theme of this year. So we're seeing a lot of what we're saying, that location really is everywhere. It's catching up in all the major verticals and industries that you can think of. It really is ubiquitous. You can see, like the usage of location intelligence on almost every industry. And if you look at it, actually, like it's really impactful. So consider that 70% of the GDP is actually connected to location intelligence, can be impacted by location intelligence. This is one of the industries where we can actually have a bigger impact about how the world works. And we're seeing it now more than ever. So let's have a few examples with that. So we've heard a lot about the impact on a consumer perspective. So Google Maps and other products can like really change the way that we think about like maps. And now it's very hard to think about like driving your car without using navigation. Like you can think about like the impact when it comes to health services. So those are very, very clear. Similar probably on the society side, right? So a lot of people can get the idea about what is the actual kind of like impact of you in terms of job creation, of helping saving like a reduction on CO2. Those are very kind of like well-known facts where geospatial kind of like comes to contribute to society. But what most people don't know really is around the impact in business. It is considered that around 5%, there is a 5% potential of improvement in the form of new business generations or optimizations on every business. That's huge. We're talking about a massive opportunity to optimize how businesses work by utilizing location intelligence. And that is what we are seeing. We're seeing a lot of use cases where companies are changing the way they're doing things by applying location intelligence. Talking from many different kind of like use cases, from site selection to climate change monitoring to geomarketing. There's many kind of like use cases that we see now in CARTO. And that is actually talks about this industry. Geospatial and location intelligence is very horizontal. It really can be used by so many different ways. And that is why we believe like a platform is such an important thing. Because the number of use cases, it just keeps growing. We count more than 100 use cases right now on CARTO that we are identifying. And we'd love to hear about, like how you're using CARTO or how do you expect to use it, over these 2 days. So, and why is this happening? And in part, we believe, is because there's never been a better moment to work on geography. Really, like you see now a lot of adoption on geospatial technology, but also, availability of new data. And I want to talk in particular about one type of data that is right now what we believe in the edge of, like getting changed, and that is census. Census is used by most companies, and it's used public organizations to take a lot of different decisions. There's actually billions of dollars moved by taking decisions with census data. It is the fundamental, like, if you want to say it's the fundamental core data set for geospatial analysis. Knowing where people live, right? Knowing where people live, knowing the demographics of where people are. So we actually use it a lot, and that is actually census is part of our data observatory, and you have it, a lot of you are using it already. But one of the things, it's very clear when you work with census data is that census data is getting really old. On average, we estimate that census data around the world is already 7 years old. There's for everything that every country that is collecting census data, doing it on periods of, for example, United States every 10 years, there is a gap. So in the case of United States, the last census was 8 years ago. And that means that any census that we give you now is really a projection from the census that started 8 years ago. And that is actually a problem. That means that, a lot of, cases, the data, as it gets, more outdated, even if projected and corrected, it's getting worse and worse. And on average, we are at 7 years old. So I want to put it, in the context of where we are. We're talking about, about Williamsburg, right? So let's think about, how was Williamsburg, 8 years ago. This is Williamsburg 8 years ago. It was an industrial area. It was mostly, industrial buildings. There was no much economic activity. It was just at the start of a change on the way that, it is, right? So since then, the whole the whole area has changed dramatically into, what you see now, where we are. But if you go to walk, you're going to see a very vibrant neighborhood with a very specific now demographics in a way. Let's put it that way. So if you look at, the census data, if you look at census data and you got data from 8 years ago, now think about the type of decisions that you can make in a neighborhood like this. And this is, of course, in New York, a fast-changing city. But the world is not getting, slower. It's just getting faster. Changes are happening faster and faster. And, you can see, why we do need, a different solution to this. We need to move on from, collecting data every 10 years in that way. So what if we actually could have a real-time census? What if we could know, not every 10 years, but what if we could collect it every day? How different will that be, right? How will be, how much more precise, how much other different type of applications we could have if we had access to a different way of inferring or, getting census data, right? So we've been thinking a lot about this. And actually we got a few things to showcase you during these 2 days around this topic. As we believe is one of the most important problems to solve on location intelligence. If you get better census demographic information, a lot of the different analysis that we are building and that are doing on our platform will get better. So that is a fundamental block to improve from. So how are we doing it? So the first thing is that we're looking at human mobility. And for human mobility, understand about where people are, how do they move, those type of information, that type of information. And how do we do it? We use 2 main sources of data. We make use of telco data, so essentially every time that your phone is connected to an antenna, it's already giving an indication of the density of the number of people that are in an area. It has its own limitations in terms of precision, but we can improve it also with what we call app data collected through the usage of mobile apps, right? So that gives us what we call a human mobility index. It's a foot traffic layer, and you're going to be seeing a little bit of that later. So that's one way that we can get to know where people are and how they move. Another area, that is very important is expenditure data. So, and we have today, and later on here, we have a MasterCard token, and there is actually a pretty good announcements that we have on partnership with MasterCard. But, like knowing where people kind of like do buy things, the economic activity. Like that is another fundamental block that you need to have that type of real-time sensors. And then, of course, now you can have other type of things like traffic data. So not only is mobility of people, but like mobility of cars and how the whole system works together, right? So that is actually like what we've been working over the last year at CARTO. A lot goes into what we call in the data observatory is to the introduction of these new sources of data, these third-party sources, so to make them available on our product, on the platform, so that you can create solutions or that you can utilize them on your analysis. So we're partnering with a number of companies, that can, give us those data pieces points. A lot of them, most of them are actually in this room today. So that's one of the things I want you to call out, that I want you to get out of this conference. Understand about like what is new data sources are available and how they can impact the way that you think about geospatial analysis. So that's really exciting for us. So this opens like an obvious question, which is like how do we handle privacy? So when we say that we know how many people are here, it doesn't mean that we really that we know that like Javier, like Ian Walls is here. We just know, like some aggregated form of that. So it's similar. The best way that I describe it is like we really know something similar to census. Census is a fundamental block to understand, like demographics on a city, but you don't get to know the particular individuals, right? So how do we do that? We do it in different ways. First, more on the technical side, we do not store personal data. So we actually we anonymize. We'll show you in a minute. We process it within the partner's infrastructure, so it doesn't get into our site. And then we anonymize and we aggregate. So let me show you one by one. So how do we anonymize? The way that we anonymize, first of all, is by removing any call-like identifier that can get to the source. So if you're working with telco data, we don't have access to, to your telephone number. We don't have access to anything that can actually help us to target customers, target users. And this is very important. Is not only that like saves like privacy, but also limits the type of use cases that you can expect CARTO be enabling. You cannot think of CARTO as a solution for targeting individuals. It's not a geo-marketing platform. It's a different type of use case. It might use the same data, but we are not actually on the business of targeting individuals. So we strip down all that so that there's no way for us to go back to identify the user or to call like connect him. The second part is how do we aggregate? So instead of like just getting like individual records, we do aggregate them into different ways so that if we don't get certain amount of people or data in an area, we will not actually disclose it. So there's not much of an anonymization if you have like if we declare that there's one person in this room, it can be actually de-anonymized quite easily. So one way that we do that is ensuring that there is certain amount of data per each of the aggregations that we make. And then we aggregate in different ways. So we aggregate in the most basic forms, like things like grids or X-bins. This is the classical call-like aggregations. We aggregate also in administrative boundaries. So you have it already preprocessed per neighbors all the way like to the country. So all that data is preprocessed and organized on this format. We also do it in a very interesting form. We call it street segments, where essentially what we do is take the streets and try to statistically associate the numbers to just the segments. Think about segments like in traffic, but instead of just giving you traffic, we give you all sorts of other features, other forms of data for that one. And that can be very useful for a lot of particular kind of like city use cases or public sector use cases. The last one is what we call smart geographies. So like I said, like sometimes you don't have enough information about a particular area because there's not enough data. So we cannot disclose that. Or if there is enough data but it's not enough representative, it's not going to be very useful. So what we do with that is what we call is just create a smart geography. So it's is group multiple areas together so that we have enough data to be able to disclose it, but also to be significant, statistically significant, right? So we do that automatic kind of like mingling of the data, or gerrymandering, if you want to say, so that you actually can utilize it even if there is not enough data behind it. So those are the different forms that we are aggregating the data, and that you will be able to consume it. If you're not already bored, I mean, like, how many emails have you got this week about GDPR and changing, like, in policies? I mean, like, 10, 20? It's like, well, here's one more. So actually, because of that, we had to do a lot of work to be the GDPR compliant, so the European law for privacy for personal data. So that's an important point. And that, I think, is something that, as an industry, we're going to have to be watching out a lot. So these principles that I was describing, like aggregation and anonymization, are going to be a fundamental part that we have to consider when we're working with this data. And we're going to have to explain a lot also to our customers and a lot of users, like how it's actually, how we treat personal data so that it doesn't go against that. So my suggestion in this case is, like we are doing is what census does. And I don't think anybody can say that, like census is a bad thing for any country, and, therefore, like having this information will make the world work just much better. So, yeah, but now that we know that, I mean, like, what is actually, like the thing that we can do with this type of data? This is where it gets exciting. This is why I think, like, there's never been a better moment for geography. We have data now that has never been available. The idea of, like having an almost real-time census, it can change dramatically the way that we think about solving geospatial problems. And that is, like in part, one of the things that we want to inspire, during 2 days through a number of use cases and ideas about how we are leveraging this new type of data. But there's two in particular that I always kind of like to remark. So the first thing that this type of real-time census give us is what I call, like it's an always updated resource. That's the obvious, more precise, like an always updated. That is clear. But the second, I think, is even more important, is the idea of always on. The idea that we don't have to go to a customer, we don't have to solve a problem, like, in a point, and then wait another year to actually get another analysis. The idea that we can be reanalyzing the problem that we are, trying to solve continuously every day and see how it changes over time, I think is going to be a game changer on the location intelligence industry. It allows us to essentially monitor, over time, like how good our models are. And then you can think about like machine learning and how this type of data will change, the way that we can leverage this resource. I think that is, in part, like from my point of view, the most exciting. The idea that we can move on from like a one-time analysis to a continuous and always-on analysis. So, very excited about that. And actually, there's going to be, like a talk by some of our colleagues, like that I highly recommend on, like just talking in particular around this topic. So, really, this is about like how we are reinventing GIS. So if you think about like GIS as the traditional industry where like you will gather data and then you will do an analysis and you will sell it to your customer, we're thinking now about like how we can actually set up infrastructure to continuously understand a problem. It's a different way of engagement with a lot of in the way that we implement GIS. And I think that's what we call it. What I think it's fair to say that we are reinventing GIS, and that's the way that I want you to think about this. It's a new era for geography. Have to look at the things that we used to do before and think about like how we can do that now with this availability of new data and platform. So how does this actually connect? So the idea at CARTO really is that what we want is to enable customers. I mean, we want to enable you to to do this type of use cases in the simpler form. That's why we started with CARTO Builder, like making it easy, an easy interface for data analysts to work with the data. We also work on CARTO Engine for developers, and now with Data Observatory, where we're making available this data in a convenient, aggregated form so that you can perform analysis on them on a simple way. And that has been showing a lot of traction. In fact, like in terms of the platform, we've seen more than 10,000 location intelligence solutions already built, like on the CARTO platform. That is, like a lot of different kind of like solutions, built using our technology. And I think in part, one of the things that, we believe makes us different is that we're trying to really make that development of solutions with this type of data easier and, like much easier, much faster and much better for our customers. So today I want to talk to you about a few things that we are doing in our platform to help you kind of like make these solutions. The first thing, I think, like a lot of people appreciate that, is that CARTO, we take a lot of care about the user experience and the design. In fact, I think that was, like one of the core differentiators from the beginning. We were coming from an industry that did not, like respect kind of like user experience. It was a very professional industry where the user was the user experience was kind of like the last priority of most of applications. So we changed that. We actually put, like user experience and design at the core of the product. And you see that on Builder, you see it on the applications that you can create with CARTO. And I think, like that is the reason why a lot of you got, in the first place, attracted to our platform. So what we're doing now is actually, like taking that design principles, that design work, and make it available to you. So I got a video for that. Great. So that is Airship. So Airship is our new design library for development of location intelligence solutions, intelligence apps. And it's available now. There's going to be a few sessions talking about it in here. But essentially, all these components that you see on Builder and that you see on our platform, now you can use them to build your own custom applications. And we think that's going to be very important for a lot of our partners who like find like the user experience to be one of the most challenging kind of parts of delivering location intelligence apps. So we've seen a lot of success already utilizing for speeding up the development of applications. So I'm very excited about it. It has like different type of widgets. They are all connected to maps, available in different different frameworks and libraries. It's a very, very, very interesting like library. I think that will make the quality of the location intelligence apps that we're building as a community like much better. So in fact, actually, there is, like I said, like a full session to design using Airship. I highly recommend. We have a few kind of like examples of applications already built on top of Airship. In fact, one of them that I'm most excited about is called Traffico, and it's a solution that we built together with Waze data, to help cities to understand mobility mobility in their streets. So it helps you to visualize not only the real-time data of Waze, but also historical data. And there's also a few sessions, where you will be hearing about. That's entirely built, like using Airship. So that's number one. That's number one announcement that I have for today. The second one is CARTO.js. CARTO.js is the JavaScript library that you use for building most of the solutions with the CARTO platform. So and now we are releasing CARTO.js 4.0. It has, like a new advantages, to leverage the new capabilities of the platform. But also, like it is, I think it is, like a great, like upgrade in terms of the documentation and the ease of use. So I highly, really recommend you to check it out. I also have a small video for that. So together, CARTO.js and Airship, I provide the framework for the development of these solutions. And that's what we expect that, from now on, like customers and partners will start using. There is a training available for it, during these 2 days. And there's, like a lot of examples that we are releasing together with it. So please check it out. The third thing I want to talk about is CARTO Frames. This is our library to help data scientists to utilize Jupyter notebooks, to utilize the CARTO platform. And we created it because we saw that, like most of the data scientists that were interacting with our platform wanted to use it within the tools that they were using. And that is Python and notebooks and Jupyter notebooks in particular. So it helps, like facilitates the work of the data scientists when working with creating visualizations from there, saving them in CARTO, sharing them with other people. So it's there's a new revamped version of CARTO Frames that we are also like announcing, and we're going to have Michelle from our team talking about it. So that's also a great upgrade in there. This is all coming together in what we call the CARTO Developer Center, which is, again, an improvement on the documentation and the way that we explain those pieces together. It's available now, and you can get, like better, documentation in terms of our APIs, but also understanding how these pieces come together. So check the developer center. I think it's a great push, to make things easier. The last thing I want to talk is about, like, also a product that we're launching called CARTO BL, and that is our vector rendering library in the next generation to handle large data sets. And we've heard a lot of you, talk about like the need for higher performance and, and higher interactivity on the applications that you were building. So we got that in mind. The core capabilities that we call like thinking about them is, first of all, is talking about like high performance. How we can leverage GL renderers, to work, like in much larger data sets on the client side. So it's a fully vector, high performance library. It actually liberates some of the core capabilities of the CARTO platform, like the smart aggregations that, like we can do. So we can render the maps live, and that means that we can aggregate live the data and make it useful, like to the client side in a way that will make, like this type of visualizations perform faster. So it leverages CARTO aggregation capabilities in a very interesting way. It has, like some, like the best dynamic vector tile support, I think, like that you can see on the industry right now. So it has like a lot of operations that can be done on the client side, but when they cannot be done in the client side, they fall back towards backend side. There's a lot of it. Full cartographic capabilities, optimal for, like it's optimal for large data sets. And finally, I think this is something that a lot of people will like. We finally got support for Torre animated styles for polygons. So here's a few examples of them. You can see like the performance of the library is pretty fantastic. So we're talking about like thousands of polygons animated over time. That's something that we've heard from you a lot. They need to do this type of visualizations. So that's like there's some cool examples. You have like very intensive cartographic support. So that means that you can do like very complex symbologies with its own language. So it's a very feature-rich when it comes to cartography, as it's always been in the case of CARTO. It also has this zoom-dependent cartography. So you can see as you zoom in, zoom out, you can change the symbology, and it's kind of like adapted seamlessly. So we've worked a lot, to optimizing that part of the experience. As you zoom in, changing, what data you can see and how controlling that part of the experience. It is very performant, so it means that we can do like very kind of like funky type of like visualizations, like simulating even rasters, animations, like as vector kind of like layers. But one thing that I like about these maps in particular is like it shows the flexibility in the form of type of visualizations that you can actually create with it. So similar to what we have with CARTO CSS before, now we're trying to ensure that not only we're giving you a set of predefined type of visualizations, but a full cartographic language that you can use for creating, like your maps. So again, like extensive kind of like symbology, and not only for animated maps, also obviously for like static maps. So for that, I want to tell you one example usage that we've actually been working on, and with one of our customers, where we are leveraging CARTO BL for the last few months. So this is a project called Global Fishing Watch. So it's a project that is tracking all the vessels in the world, to see if, like what are the fishing activities. And it's been using CARTO for a long time. So it gives you like a world picture, essentially, of where, fishing is happening. If it's, like going into protected areas, like where is illegal fishing happening, where is legal fishing happening. Actually, this is a pretty cool part of the visualization. You see, like the main center area there is an area that was designated during the Obama administration as a protected area, and you can see how the vessels like stop going to it, right? So how it gets defended. So that's like utilizing our Torre technology. And in the context of this project, we're working with a company called Pelagic Data. So what Pelagic Data does is they've created this device that they can attach to the boats that collects GPS information inside the boat, and then whenever it gets, when you get to land, to the port, it pushes that data to the cloud, right? And they've been utilizing CARTO for a long time for this activity. So the whole advantage for them is that this form of data collection is very cost effective. And by being very cost effective, it means that they can put it, like in very small boats, not only like the large fishing boats that, have other like satellite systems. So they work, like in 25 different countries around the world, putting, like these sensors to try to collect information about where fishermen are going to fish, right? So the device looks like, you see, it's a little device that they put in there. They can install it, it's fully solar powered, it just has no maintenance. You just install it and it collects the data. So we've been asking them, and like I said, they've been using the CARTO platform already for a few years. So we asked them to get some data dumps, and so that we can use CARTO BL to visualize this type of data. And since then, we're working on integrating this type of visualizations inside the platform. That will come later on. But I want to show you a few things, based with that. We're talking about like millions of records here that it gets generated by each of these boats. So it gets a very large amounts of data. And what you can see here is the animation, produced by those vessels. And, like the color of the lines actually represents if they're fishing or they just got like vaporing. They call it. It's just traveling, right? So. So again, this is, like very, like just showcasing, one particular area. It's showing you here density. So you can see, like in this case, I think we're working on a 10 million trips data set, and we're changing the color of the trips based on the hour when they are fishing. So this is showing you, like the performance of the library in the form of, handling like really large data sets when it can client side, or if it needs to because the data is too large, server side, aggregating it and making it available to a vector rendering on the client. So I think it's a very, very exciting new technology. It is available as of yesterday, so you can check it out. We will be talking about it during these CARTO locations, and we cannot wait to see what are the type of applications and solutions that you can make when you work with this type of technology. So very excited about that. Yeah, so that actually just summarizes it for me. So I just want to call if something from these 2 days, just to get to this idea there's this new moment for geography where we live in. There's more data now, there's a new analysis, there's more tools. We have ways to rethink how we provide location intelligence to customers. And my biggest vision for these 2 days is to talk to you about it, see how you actually think about how it touches your industries, how it touches your business, and how we can be part of that revolution that is happening. So thank you very much, and hope that you enjoy these 2 days.